Hi, welcome back to my reading TikTok. So I've already done my crocheting, now I'm on reading, and because I got more than 10 likes, I will be continuing with holes. So where we got to? Let's see where we got to. So we got to, as Stanley's father liked to say, I learned from failure. So let's continue from there. But perhaps that was part of the curse as well. If Stanley and his father weren't always hopeful, then it wouldn't hurt so much every time their hopes were crushed. Not every Stanley Yonats has been a failure, Stanley's mother often pointed out. Whenever Stanley or his father became so discouraged that they actually started to believe in the curse. The first Stanley Yonats, Stanley's great-grandfather, had made a fortune in the stock market. He couldn't have been too unlucky. At such times she neglected to mention the bad luck that befell the first Stanley Yonats. He lost his entire fortune when he was moving from New York to California. His stagecoach was robbed by an outlaw kissing Kate Barlow. If it wasn't for that, Stanley's family would now be living in a mansion on a beach in California. Instead, they were crammed into a tiny apartment that smelled of burnt rubber and foot odour. If only, if only. The apartment smelled the way it did because Stanley's father was trying to invent a way to recycle old sneakers. The first person who finds a use for old sneakers, he said, will be a very rich man. It was this latest project that led to Stanley's arrest. The bus ride became increasingly bumpy because the road was no longer paved. Actually, Stanley had been impressed when he first found out that his great-grandfather was robbed by kissing Kate Barlow. True, he would have preferred living on the beach in California, but it was still kind of cool to have someone in your family robbed by a famous outlaw. Kate Barlow didn't actually kiss Stanley's great-grandfather. That would have been really cool, but she only kissed the men she killed. Instead, she robbed him and left him stranded in the middle of the desert. How unlucky to have survived, Stanley's mother was quick to point out. He was lucky to have survived, The bus was slowing down. The guard grunted as he stretched his arms. "Welcome to Camp Green Lake," said the driver. Stanley looked out the dirty window. He couldn't see a lake, and hardly anything was green. Chapter 4. Stanley felt somewhat dazed as the guard unlocked his handcuffs and led him off the bus. He'd been on the bus for over 8 hours. "Be careful," the bus driver said as Stanley walked down the steps. Stanley wasn't sure if the bus driver meant for him to be careful going down the steps or if he was telling him to be careful at Camp Green Lake. "Thanks for the ride," he said. His mouth was dry and his throat hurt. He stepped onto the hard, dry dirt. There was a band of sweat around his wrist where the handcuffs had been. The land was barren and desolate. He could see a few run-down buildings and some tents. Further away, there was a cabin beneath 2 tall trees. Those 2 trees were the only plant life he could see, though there weren't even weeds. A guard led Stanley into a small building. A sign on front said, "You are entering Camp Green Lake Juvenile Correctional Facility." Next to it was another sign which declared that it was a violation of the Texas Penal Code to bring guns, explosives, weapons, drugs, or alcohol onto the premises. As Stanley read the sign, he couldn't help but think, well, duh. The guard led Stanley into the building where he felt the welcome relief of air conditioning. A man was sitting with his feet up on the desk. He turned his head when Stanley and the guard entered, but otherwise didn't move. Even though he was inside, he wore sunglasses and a cowboy hat. He also held a can of soda and the slight sight of it made Stanley even more aware of his own thirst. He waited while the bus guard gave the man some papers to sign. "That's a lot of sunflower seeds," the bus guard said. Stanley noticed a burlap sack filled with sunflower seeds on the floor next to the desk. "I quit smoking last month," the man said in a cowboy hat. He had a tattoo of a rattlesnake on his arm, and he signed his name. As he signed his name, the snake's rattle seemed to wiggle. "I used to smoke a pack a day. Now I eat a sack of these every week." The guard laughed. There must have been a small refrigerator behind his desk, because the man in the cowboy hat produced 2 more cans of soda. For a second, Stanley hoped that he might be one for him. But the man gave one to the guard and said the other was for the driver. 9 hours here and 9 hours back, the guard grumbled. What a day. Stanley thought about the long, miserable ride and felt a little sorry for the guard and the bus driver. The man in the cowboy hat spit sunflower shell seeds into a waste paper basket. Then he walked around the desk to Stanley. "My name is Mr. Sir," he said. "Whenever you speak to me, you must call me by my name. Is that clear?" Stanley hesitated. Yes, Mr. Sir," he said, although he couldn't imagine that was really the man's name. "You're not in the Girl Scouts any more," Mr. Sir said. Stanley had to remove his clothes in front of Mr. Sir, who made sure he wasn't hiding anything. He was then given 2 sets of clothes and a towel. Each set consisted of a long-sleeve orange jumpsuit, an orange t-shirt, and a yellow socks. Stanley wasn't sure if the socks had been yellow originally. He was also given white sneakers, an orange cap, and a canteen made of heavy plastic, which unfortunately was empty. The cap had a piece of cloth sewn into the back of it for neck protection. Stanley got dressed. The clothes smelled like soap. Mr. Sir told him he should wear 1 set to work in and 1 set for relaxation. Laundry was done every 3 days. On that day, his work clothes would be washed, then another set would become his work clothes, and he would get clean clothes to wear while resting. "You are to dig 1 hole each day, including Saturdays and Sundays. Each hole must be 5 feet deep and 5 feet across in every direction. Your shovel is your measuring stick. Breakfast is served at 4:30 a.m. Stanley must have looked surprised, because Mr. Sir went on to explain that they started early to avoid the hottest part of the day. "No one is going to babysit you," he added. "The longer it takes you to dig, the longer you will be out in the sun. If you dig up anything interesting, you are to report it to me or any other counsellor. When you finish, the rest of the day is yours." Stanley nodded to show he understood. "This isn't a Girl Scout camp," said Mr. Sir. He checked Stanley's backpack and allowed him to keep it. He then led Stanley outside into the blazing heat. "Take a good look around you," Mr. Sir said. "What do you see?" Stanley looked across at the vast wasteland. The air seemed thick with heat and dirt. "Not much," he said. Then he added hastily, "Mr. Sir." Mr. Sir laughed. "You see any guard towers?" "No." "You see any electric fences?" "No, Mr. Sir." "There's no fence at all, is there?" "No, Mr. Sir." "You want to run away?" Mr. Sir asked him. Stanley looked back at him, unsure of what he meant. "If you want to run away, go ahead, start running. I'm not going to stop you." Stanley didn't know what kind of game Mr. Sir was playing, and we'll stop there. For the next section, if you would like me to continue reading this book, 20 likes, and I will continue reading it. Otherwise, tomorrow, I will be reading a different book. So 20 likes, and I will continue reading this one. Thank you for joining, and I hope to see you on my live later for my crocheting. Bye!